Well, would you look at that? It seems we have another ET on our hands. Now, if you're unaware of what ET is, it's considered one of the biggest flops in video gaming history. The reason for it is that it destroyed a console. You see, back in the day, when the movie Extraterrestrial came out, it was incredibly popular. People really loved that movie. And so they thought that they can ride on the popularity of the movie by making a video game associated with it. And the video game was called E.T. Now, the problem is that back in the day, cartridges barely had any memory on them. So the video games were extremely simple. And so trying to make a video game based on a movie that has like a well and thought out story with deep levels of plot was impossible. But still, like, they wanted to ride on the movie. And so, like, they had a cartridge that had, like, the picture from the film on it. And the actual game was incredibly complex to the point where most people didn't even know what to do in order to win the game. It was insanely convoluted as well. And even more than that, it was extremely buggy. And back then, you couldn't just release an online patch in order to fix the bugs. But the people who made the game were so convinced that the game was going to be successful that they created a lot of cartridges. And no one wanted to buy those cartridges. And so it was a massive flop. And they had to bury the cartridges within the Nevada desert. Like, we're talking about truckloads filled with cartridges. And that is considered to be like one of the worst flops in video gaming history. Now, I kind of disagree with that take, because I think Concord is even a bigger flop, but it's not as spectacular, right? Because no one had to actually bury the physical copies of Concord in the Nevada desert simply because they don't exist. Because Concord is an online game, you download it digitally, and so there's no cartridges to be buried, right? So it's not as spectacular, and probably that is why it's not getting the attention. But I would definitely say that Concord is the biggest flop in gaming history, and sitting next to it has to be Dragon Age. Like, Dragon Age is another massive flop, and it reminds me of E.T. because it did the same thing. Like, it assumed, okay, if Dragon Age is a good game, and a lot of people played it, and it's considered the classic, like, all we gotta do is we slap the title Dragon Age on our game, and people will buy it. And it turns out it doesn't work that way. People, they may get interested in the title, but once they see that the content is bad, they choose not to play it. It's just, like titles are kind of like clickbait, It's what I said in a different video, that this is what the Asians are doing now, and it's what the West did back in the day. You put a beautiful woman on the box, right? Like, you put some cleavage, you put some tits on the box, and that is enough to drag people's attention. Like, they will say, wow, like, this is a hot chick. And they buy the game. And if the story is amazing, initially they bought the game for the chick, but then they stay for the story. Like, came for the tits, stayed for the story is not just a meme, it's a marketing tactic. But it's the same with the title of a game, right? Like, if you have, like, an interesting title that drags people's attention, okay, it's the new Dragon Age. But when you play the game, it's nothing but bland, boring, woke shit, people aren't going to stay and play it. And in the age of refunds, you're not even going to trick customers into buying it. Because this is like another thing that I've noticed, right? Like, when refunding came up on Steam, a lot of game journalists were absolutely livid. They were foaming at the mouth. Because now, you had their friends that were making like some random crappy indie games. The journalists would give it like a 10 out of 10. Games like Gone Home, walking simulators level shit. Although, thinking back, like, Gone Home is a pretty good game compared to what other crap came out after it, right? Like, I would rather play Gone Home than Dragon Age. I'm not even kidding. And so, anyway, they would freak out because now they couldn't grift people into buying games, right? Because that's how it worked back in the day. Like, you'd have an indie game. The media would hype it up, and they would say, oh, this is a 10 out of 10. You didn't have, like, streamers and people that were making trailers and playing the game. And so the ones that were trusting the media would end up with a game that's really bad, really horrible, and they couldn't refund it. right? So when Steam allowed for refunds, like this entire grifting industry collapsed. And the Steam refund is probably what also crippled Dragon Age. Because, like, I know a lot of people that bought it, because believe it or not, you know, like, most people aren't tuned into the culture war. Like, most people, they know, okay, I played Dragon Age 1, it was good. I played Dragon Age 2, it was okay. Dragon Age 3 was kind of meh, but, you know, maybe they're going to pick up the ball again with the new Dragon Age, right? Like, they had a lot of years in order to train themselves to make a good game. And so they buy the new one, they see it's absolute horseshit, and they refund it, right? So, like, the company doesn't get to steal people's money anymore. Doesn't take you that long in order to figure out that the game is shit. And so what ends up happening is that now they can't even give the game away. And I want you to remember that a lot of these publications, a lot of these journalists, right? Like, when I say that they are the PR arm of the company, I know what I'm talking about. Like, what is the purpose of a video game journalist, right? Like, why did God send the journalist to us on Earth? To punish us? No. He sent the game journalist on Earth because he realized that people don't have a lot of money, right? Like, times are tough. We're still reeling from the Bidenomics. The price of eggs is the new index that has replaced the price of gas. And so, like, people don't have that much money to buy all the video games. And you know, people still need entertainment, so they have to be a little bit more cautious with what they spend money on. And if you have, like, only $70 to spend, you're thinking, like, okay, which game should I buy? Do I get the Path of Exile? Do I get Dragon Age? Do I get, right? And this is where the journalist comes in, and allegedly he plays the games, he understands the games, and he will tell you, okay, this is a better game than the other. But when the journalist is hyping up Dragon Age and is saying, oh, it's a BioWare return to form. That's the words they use, return to form. Like almost like copying each other's homeworks. Do you remember that? And so you have the journalist saying that to the customer, and you buy the game, and it's the worst game ever, to the point where you're wondering, like, what the fuck were they even thinking? You know, because there is cringe writing that happens because, well, the writer isn't talented, or maybe they missed something, you know, like, that can happen. But then there's also, like, writing that is so bad because the person making it wasn't trying to make entertainment, but they had, like, severe daddy issues and other insecurities that they're projecting on the player. Like, the whole thing where you're sat down at a table and they're talking about pronouns, like this is a power fantasy of the writer. Like, you can tell that they always wanted to sit some people down at a table and lecture them about progressive and transgender issues. And they wanted to be the center of attention and the main character, and everyone in the room was looking at them, and they, you know, like, he had the zinger and everyone was clapping. Like that is exactly a power fantasy of the writer, and it's not there to add to the gaming world, to add to the universe, to add to the lore. And as you can see, like, all the leftards were defending this shit. You know, they were actually making the argument that this is a good game, that people like us are responsible for the game not selling, because despite the fact that the game had hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing, you know, Asmongold made a video saying that this game is gay, and apparently that's why no one bought the game. And they were coping really hard. But, like, unfortunately, you know, you can say that, okay, well, there's a lot of bigots in the West that are in the culture war. Why isn't this game selling in China? Why isn't this game selling in Japan? Why isn't this game selling in South Korea? If it's as you say, right, and this is an amazing game, why isn't it selling in other countries that don't even have the American culture war at all? Like, no one from South Korea is listening to Asmongold, right? And yet they're not buying it either. You know what they're buying? They're buying the Chinese shit. They're buying the Wukong, they're buying the Path of Exile, like, they're buying games from other countries, they're not buying this. Why is it? Let me know what you guys think, though, and as usual, I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.